Hey, what's up, everybody? Before the monster train guys freak out, no, I'm not discontinuing that content. I just had to make this video. I don't normally do these kinds of videos, but it seems like people are freaking out on the Reddit and Steam discussions, so I'm gonna go ahead and address this. So today, the Gunfire Reborn devs put in a number of balance changes that we need to talk about. I've played this game for over 100 hours. I've played both characters a lot single player. I've played both characters a lot in co-op. I play mostly Elite after I unlocked it. I've unlocked every every gun in the game, including the Demon Lore, as well as every cult scroll. So I'm going to talk about what I think about these balance changes, what I agree with, what I disagree with. Uh, The biggest one, pretty much objectively, is the change they've made to some of the talents. So we're going to start there. So they've changed the damage resistance from 3% or 5% to 25% to 3% to 15%. This means that in general, from now on, we're going to be taking a little bit more damage. Uh, Additionally, they've changed strong. Wait a second. Yeah, they did. They cut this in half. It used to be 10% to 50%. Now it's 5% to 25%. And they've changed the crit enhancement from like what they used to be. Let me check real quick. They've changed crit enhancement from 15% to 75% to 10% to 50%. So these are some pretty serious nerfs. I'm gonna say right off the bat, I don't know about this. I get it. The game gets a bit too easy once you get to a certain point in the talent levels, but I don't think this is the solution. I think instead of doing this, you guys really should just add more difficulties to the game. Like, even if the difficulties are just scaling up HP and health and number of enemies, that's fine. There are going to be people who just aren't as good at the game, and they're going to get punished way too hard by this stuff doing it in solo. For solo players who are just playing this game casually, this is a huge hit, and it's really punishing them the most. It's punishing everyone, but for players who are doing co-op or are a max level, this isn't as big of a deal. But for the solo player crowd who's just playing this casually, this is just a huge nerf. Personally, I think if you're gonna do this, you need to cut down enemy HP a little bit on the lower difficulties. And please, instead of nerfing the talents baseline, just add more difficulties. That way everyone's happy. The less experienced players can win on normal difficulty, the more experienced players can win on higher difficulties, etc., etc. I don't think this is the way to do it. So next up, we gotta talk about the scrolls. They've changed a few scrolls. This ain't right. Go back to the logbook. They've changed a few scrolls. First up, here we got elemental power. This used to be a rare scroll. They changed it to a normal scroll. What does this mean? This means that we're going to be finding this a lot more on the first stage, and when we do find it, it's going to be kind of a take it or leave it thing, because with rare scrolls, usually when we find a rare scroll, it's going to be in the second or third stage in a chest that we're choosing one of three scrolls from. So if elemental power showed up there, you could just take something else instead. But now it's showing up a lot on the first stage, it's showing up a lot more in the peddler. So that means when this shows up, if we skip it, we get nothing. So we're highly incentivized to take it. And once again, this is going to be super punishing for solo players because this is the kind of scroll that's very good in co-op because there's going to be someone on the team who wants it most of the time. But in solo players, sometimes this just outright kills the build, so you can't take it. And even the risk of it just limiting you later on means that you might end up dropping it anyway. So, I don't know. This is punishing solo players even more, but it's even better now for co-op players who don't need a ton of help because now we're pretty much for sure to get elemental power, and for the people who want elemental power, they really want elemental power. And if you're playing 4 players, there's gonna be someone in the group who wants it most of the time. So I think this is once again punishing solo players a bit too hard. Next up, we got Mid-Air Strike. I don't have a ton to say about Mid-Air Strike. They changed this, like Elemental Power, they changed this from rare to common or normal or whatever you want to call it. And I don't think this really means a ton. It was kind of a crappy scroll to begin with. It's still a crappy scroll now, except it's gonna show up more often now. I don't think this is gonna really change anything if I'm being honest. Next up, we got the Fire Enthusiast. They didn't change the text on Fire Enthusiast, but this used to be 4 burning damage per tick off the flame effect, but now you're taking 6 damage per tick. This is one I also disagree with quite a bit. It means that now, instead of this being a scroll that people running Flesh and Bones really want with fire builds every time, it's still a scroll that people with Flesh and Bones really want with fire builds every time. But now people who aren't running Flesh and Bones are going to be way less likely to take this. So now this is pretty much exclusively a combo with Flesh and Bones most of the time. Not a big fan of this change. I don't understand why you nerfed this one specifically, but uh yeah, I get it. The scroll is a little bit powerful, but it's not powerful enough that I think we need to nerf it like this. This was definitely not the way to nerf it. I think you should have done something else with it to make it a bit better when you're not running Flesh and Bones, but slightly worse when you are running Flesh and Bones, because now this is just an exclusive combo with Flesh and Bones. So next up, let me check the notes, see what we got next. Gonna be going through the rare ones next. Yeah, looks like we're gonna be looking at Final Judgment next. So let me pull up Final Judgment here. Find it. This, by the way, I've read already, and this is one that really irks me. So they've changed this from common to rare, and they've also nerfed it from 20% HP to kill normal dudes and 10% HP to kill bosses to 15% HP to kill normal dudes and 8% HP to kill bosses. So this means that the way this used to work is you'd find this early on and you'd just pick it up because it's a pretty solid scroll as long as you're not using it to kill lobsters. If you are using it to kill lobsters, stop. That doesn't work. But now it's a really mediocre scroll and it's rare, so most of the time it's going to show up next to 2 other scrolls. And that means most of the time we're just not going to take it. Like this has become an okay scroll and it's turned into a scroll that now we just ignore almost every time. But let's move on to what we got next. Right, Veteran and Copper Miner. They've buffed both these scrolls from 5 meters to 7 meters. So I like this buff. These scrolls were both terrible before. Copper Miner, it was terrible before. It's still going to be super mediocre right now. That means that it doesn't actually mean a ton. We're just going to take it anyway, but we might get a little bit more gold off of it now, which is fine. I don't think they needed to change this, but the slight buff is definitely appreciated. But now we got Veteran. So Veteran, in co-op, it used to be bad. In co-op, it's still bad because you have to kill the enemy yourself. So I think this is actually a pretty big buff for solo. This means that in solo, now we're going to be using this quite a bit more effectively because it's going to be easier to get those max HP procs. So a little bit of a buff for solo players there, which is nice, but it doesn't do nearly enough to counteract all the other bullshit you're doing for solo players. And now we go to Legendary Scrolls Deflection Shield. They changed this from 10 meters to 15 meters. Yeah, this is really bad. This pretty much makes the scroll, in my opinion, nearly unusable. It used to be really solid, especially in co-op, because you could just sit far enough away from enemies that they couldn't get close enough. But you still ran the risk of getting one-shot by Lantern Spirits and White Sharks. But now with this change, it's just there's just way too much stuff that's gonna be close enough to get the extra damage on you. And the Lantern Spirits and Sharks are still one-shotting you. Now the Catfish Gunners and the Gunners and the Desert are still one-shotting you too. Not great. Not great. It used to be really strong when I first got it, but then I kind of started losing favor for a bit once I realized how bad the Sharks and Lantern Spirits are. And now I don't think I'll be using this anymore. The scroll just sucks now. Next up, we got Sanguine Relic. This was changed from 5% lifesteal to 3% lifesteal. Yeah, this is kind of suffering from the same problem as Fire Enthusiast now. Where this used to be something that was really, really good when you comboed it with certain other scrolls, but now it's only good enough if you combo with those scrolls, and if you're not comboing it with those scrolls, then you're just not taking it, period. Don't like this nerf. This was not the direction I would have wanted to see this changed in. They also nerfed Spirit Feline, so now it's 14% HP instead of 11% HP. I don't know why. Yeah, the scroll was really overpowered, but now it's still really overpowered, and it's not as flavorful anymore, so now apparently cats have 8 lives instead of 9 lives. I don't know. If you guys want to nerf Spirit Feline, you should have done something else. This doesn't change anything, really. The scroll's still absurdly broken. It used to be absurdly broken. It's still absurdly broken. It still combos super well with scrolls like the aforementioned Sanguine Relic and a lot of other shit. I think there was one more. Let me look at the patch notes real quick to see sure. Deflection Shield, Spirit Feline, Sanguine Relic. No, that was all of them. So I'm gonna go ahead and conclude by saying I don't agree with these nerfs as a whole. Instead of nerfing the talents, you guys should just add more difficulties into a game. A lot of these scroll nerfs don't make a ton of sense. I don't know why you're punishing solo players so hard. In the future, please just consider the impacts that your balance changes have on both solo players and co-op players, because you want to make these balance changes reasonable for both of them. Stuff like this elemental power change is just a huge plus for co-op, but a huge nerf for solo. Not a big fan of that. And a lot of these other nerfs just aren't hitting the right points. The talent nerfs also, please just add more difficulty levels. Don't nerf the talents. That just makes the baseline game harder. And some people already have enough problems with the baseline game. So thanks for watching. If the devs are watching, please take what I've said here into consideration. I think that a lot of stuff you're doing here isn't quite the direction you want to be taking this in. So yeah, I'll see you guys next time.